I'm Robert Beale. I'm a lecturer in the Development Planning Unit in UCL, and I'm also a practicing agriculturalist. I've been a allotment holder for several years, and I've been very interested in developing a form of agricultural technique which is low input in terms of it doesn't involve any artificial inputs, but it also is low input in terms of labor, so you never dig the soil. It's the notion of a food crisis, and I think I've had a sense for several years that the global food system is in a total mess and is soon going to collapse, and this will pose major problems of feeding the world population, and particularly the urban population, which over the past year has outstripped the rural population globally. And so this is going to be the fundamental issue of the future, I think, which I've sensed in that somewhat academic way. And so what the project is doing is trying to bring the two things together. It's bringing my agricultural knowledge together with this vision of the international system. Our strategic objective is that cities will be feeding themselves to a large extent, and there have been surveys which have been made of London which prove that a very significant amount, like 60% or whatever, of the food needs could be met by cities themselves if they farm all their available space, which would include rooftops, balconies, and the ground. And so the knowledge transfer element in this project is building on experience mainly from Latin America, because you have had crisis situation in a number of those countries, and two very good examples would be Cuba, where you had the US blockade over a long period, which forced the Cubans, and then when the Soviet Union collapsed, Cuba was really in a very difficult economic situation, and so they simply started cultivating all available space and producing their own food, and created a very self-reliant situation with organic agriculture everywhere, and it improves the living environment in the city. It makes people less alienated, and so it's got a lot of very beneficial social effects. Or if you take the case of Argentina, where there was a major dislocation of the economy and the currency collapsed and that kind of thing. So again, people simply began to, really to avoid starvation, they began to cultivate everywhere. We had to grow certain things which were viable to start off a project, and so it's generally, potatoes are quite a good way of starting it. So we've created a bed system, and it doesn't look very neat at the moment. So our next step, which we're going to do, is to create a boundary with scaffold boards which defines the beds neatly. But we had to do the planting first, because that had to go in for obvious reasons. So I think within the next month or so, you'll see the thing will become much more neat, because we'll be creating the paths with the running between the beds. And basically, what we're employing is a no-dig method, and this is something which our knowledge from UCL and from my experience as a cultivator fits in with transition towns very clearly, and this is kind of the experience being used in Latin America as well. That you don't turn over the soil, so your input in labour is very low. We will not in the future have to plough the land. You simply dig it over initially in order to aerate it, and then so the potatoes are doing quite a useful job here of kind of aerating the soil, and we will then pile compost on top, and then the worms will do the job. So it's not only organic agriculture, but low input agriculture, and I think this point is very important to get across, because this is a crucial element of the model that we're developing. It's got to be a low input agriculture which is also highly productive, and in that sense, although we very much value the recreational aspect and the aspect of improving the quality of life, and the aspect of overcoming alienation, all those extremely important. But we have to add on to that high productivity. And this is something which has never really been addressed in the urban agriculture movement in this country. So we've got the potatoes, we've got broad beans here, which are beginning to. So these are coming to fruition now.
Uh-huh.
So we've actually got the broad beans.
Oh, well, they look excellent. They look quite large.
They look fantastic.
They're good.
So we can eat them.
They look.
They got very nice flavour. It's very, very sweet. Actually, it's fantastic.
It's lovely, actually.
One of the best I've ever tasted. And we got onions. We got some tomato plants. We brought some courgette plants along today, which we're going to plant, which are down there. And we've got quite a lot of fruit bushes along the back. There's gooseberries and raspberries and stuff like that. So we think there'll be quite a significant yield, and this will at least have a value of demonstrating what you can produce. This estate was built in the late 1930s, and this was just meant to be green space, and that there was an assumption that the green space, I suppose, would be used in some communal way, but it never really was very much. During World War II, as far as we know, it was cultivated, and a lot of the Brixton area was, a lot of Brockwell Park, which is nearby here, also was cultivated, so there was a lot of food being grown. We don't have a lot of details of it. The roof space was supposed to be originally used by people. At the end of this project, we have to indicate certain directions which it could go in.
Yeah.
And the roof space is a very important one, and our vision certainly is to have kind of greenhouses on the roof and that kind of thing. This is an extremely significant project for the future, we think, and so we're extremely grateful that Urban Bras has agreed to fund it, and this has provided extraordinary opportunity, I think. We're very pleased to be part of the Urban Buzz program overall, and to feel ourselves part of that. And in particular, that the funding which we've had and the support which we've had from the Urban Bus program has enabled us to actually initiate this thing, and we hope it's going to lead to something great.